topics that we think you should be involved with. With me is our independent, very astute gentleman, Mr. Jimmy Eastman. How are you doing in the nation's capital?
It's a wonderful day to be alive in the nation's capital. Looking forward to discussing the issues concerning our motherland and how they can best be addressed. Thank you.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be discussing some issues that have some cultural undertone. We have some cultural, societal issues. Before I go into that, I'm going to introduce the topic real quick, and then going to go to some of the historical issues surrounding female genital mutilation. This is one issue that is so private that nobody wants to talk about it, but we have to. And we're going to be talking about a retreat in Nimba County by this particular government. What are the ins and outs, the pros and the cons of retreat? There are those who say it's a waste of money. And then we are also going to be discussing the LISGIS account, the massive corruption that is going on at LISGIS. These are the folks that are supposed to be some of the integrity institution in charge of our census. From what we are understanding, there's a lot of corruption going on there, that so much so that their general account is negative $25,000. How is that possible? Then what should we think of this new Liberia darling boy on the political scene? We talk about Tiawan Gongloe. What are his prospects? Who is Tiawan Gongloe? Will he make a good president? Can he do it by himself? Should he be paired with somebody else? Will he be the front runner, or will he be the number two? And why should somebody take a man who is this strong as number two on the ticket? What are the benefits? We're going to look at those. Mr. Eastman, we are talking about one of the most important issues in Liberia. It is cultural, one that nobody wants to talk about. I have called all over the place, talking to women who are considered to be advocate for women, advocate for girls, and nobody wants to talk about this issue, but we're going to talk about it because we have to. It began last week when the Deputy Speaker of the House, Honorable Fonati Kofa, proffered a bill to make genital mutilation or female circumcision illegal in the country. So this topic requires not emotion, but we're going to be looking at some facts. We are going to be looking at some data. We are going to be looking at what the literature says, and we are going to be looking at science. I know this is very touchy. It is sacred, they call it, to almost every tribe in the country, with the exception maybe of the Southeast. And then we are going to be looking at what the data say about our neighboring countries: Guinea, the Ivory Coast, Ghana, Nigeria, Mali, Sierra Leone. Jimmy Eastman, let's delve into this. This is a very serious matter, genital mutilation. What is it, and who practices it, and what is the implication?
Well, let's delve into this. It's difficult to talk about, but it needs to be addressed. FGM, female genital mutilation. It involves, as we know, the partial or total removal of the external female genitalia, and it can cause other injury to the female genital organs, and it's all for non-medical reasons. There's no medical basis for this procedure. It has been a practice for cultures throughout Africa. Several different countries do it, as far as East Africa and Ethiopia. And we also know that it's been a practice in Liberia, particularly from the Sunday society. Our girls have to go through it. Today, The estimates are that of at least more than 200 million girls and women alive today have undergone FGM in 30 countries in Africa and the Middle East and in Asia. In Liberia, like I said, one time in 2018, President Ellen Johnson made a move to stop this procedure. She issued an executive order, but that executive order was just for a year. And even with that, there were still some violations against the order. And again, because the order was only for 1 year, it has resumed. The issue is it is a cultural practice to prepare girls for passage. But we need to reform that because we have seen girls have died. Girls have gone all kinds of issues with having birth, painful urination, all sorts of complications have been involved in this. But can we get our people to say, this may have been necessary to some at the time, but we have found it is absolutely not necessary. And in fact, it is harmful. But we'll have to talk to the chiefs and the zoos and the people who do practices, and we all have to agree that we need to stop this. I don't believe simply issuing a law is just the best way to go about it. I think first, let's discuss with the people who practice this. Let's explain to them why we need to desist from such practice. Let's explain to them what it has caused in their lives. And girls have been hesitant to come forth because when they do, it's shameful and they are hesitant. In some places, in Africa, if you were to even scream while you're going through this pain, you could lose your recognition. You have to bear that pain within. There is absolutely no reason for we to put our girls and women through this sort of practice. So why can't we have this conversation with the zoos and the chiefs so we can put an end to this practice? And then once we've had this conversation, once we sat down and understood that this is not in our favor, then we can issue a law banning it once and for all.
Well, Mr. Eastman, thank you very much for the foresight. First of all, let's look at the history of female genital mutilation. From what the literature is saying, this is basically a non-African tradition. It was brought to us by mostly the Arabs. The history tells us that it started in Egypt and the Middle East, and then the Arabian Peninsula. And as the Arabs conquered Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, they brought their practices and imposed them on the people, and they gave them definition of why this should happen, from the cultural identity to marriageability to attractiveness. Everything that benefited the male was given as an excuse for this barbaric act. And let's look at the ages. When we are talking about this act, there are four kinds of this act. And I did a lot of research on this, and I went through the different universities. And the four types of genital mutilation. Number one is the one they call only pupils remover, or a pupils remover plus or partial or total remover of the clitoris. That is one. Number two is the remover of the clitoris plus a portion of all the labia. Then three is the remover or portion of all the labia minora with the labia majora being sewn together. And then 4, all other harmful procedures to female genitalia for non-medical purposes. So we are talking about a barbaric. In some instances, they actually not only do they mutilate the woman, but they actually sew her inner parts together to the point where anything outside of urination is actually painful. Sexually, is painful, and because of the closure of the inner body of the woman, that she retains a lot of urine, a lot of things that go on with the woman, and they have a bacteria infection, and when they go to see medical doctors, there becomes some severe scarring, and it goes on and on. So let's look at some of the numbers here. When we are looking at the numbers, we are talking about in sub-Saharan Africa. Let's say Africa for the purpose of this debate. The table says prevalence among girls 0 to 14 years of age. Gambia is number 1, 56% of babies, from babies to 14. Mauritania, followed by Mauritania, Indonesia, Guinea, at 46%, Eritrea, Sudan, Nigeria. So when you are talking about the countries in West Africa that will be woman-friendly, as it relates to this, would be Kenya, in Africa, actually Kenya, 3%, Central African Republic, 1%, Ghana, 1%, Uganda, 1%, Togo, 0.13, and Benin, 0.2. Now, when you go to girls and women between the ages of 15 to 49, Somalia is 98% of all women. In Somalia, 98% of women, all women in Somalia between the ages of 14 and 49 have had this procedure done. Followed by Guinea, our neighbor, Guinea. 97% of women in Guinea between the ages of 50 and 49 years of age have gone through this procedure. And then followed by Djibouti, Sierra Leone at 90%. Mali, 89%. Egypt, 87%. Eritrea, 83%. Burkina Faso, 76%. Gambia, 75%. Mauritania, 69%. Liberia, 50%. 50% of women in Liberia between the ages of 50 and 49, 50% of these women have been subjugated to this barbaric act under the guise that this is part of our culture, this is part of our tradition. And even people, educated people from Monrovia, from the capital themselves, were taking their girls to the villages, in the butchers, because they felt that this, I think they themselves may not have been educated to the harmfulness of this. They look at this as the rite of passage without understanding the clinical aspect of this. So, Jimmy, this is something that we need to talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have had some particular cases, mind you. There was a case in in July of 2011, Ruth Berry. The members of the politically influential Sunday Society, who kidnapped and forcibly subjected Ruth to this procedure. They were sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. However, they appealed the judgment and they were released on bail. The appeal has been pending at the Supreme Court, the last I heard of it. Another case was Zaydo. Zaydo in 2017, a 16-year-old girl named Zaydo died in the Tapata area in the Sunday Bush during forced mutilation. The traditional leaders, the Zols, subjected Zay and 25 more girls to this FGM procedure, despite the government ban. Like I told you, there was a ban on it on the Sanity Society operations. So why the question boggles me, Mr. Gaiman, why are we perpetual? What is the benefit? There is no health benefit. We have established that. There is definitely no benefit for the girls, because we can enumerate the things they have to go through. Just to mention a few, is severe pain, excessive bleeding, genital tissue swelling, fever, infections, urinary problems, wound healing problems, injury to surrounding genital tools, shock, death. These are the things they go through. And they have long-term complications, urinary problems, vaginal problems, menstrual problems, and scar tissue and keloids, sexual problems, pain during intercourse and decreased satisfaction, increased risk of childbirth complications, need for later surgeries. For example, the sealing or narrow of the vaginal area may lead to the practice of cutting open the sealed area later. Psychological problems. Okay, so we've established that this is not good for girls. So then why do we continue to do it? This is the question I beg. And if it is a tradition, let's examine the tradition. What are the reasons why they say they do it? Well, one of them is what? There's a social pressure to conform with what others do. So they have been practicing it. This is a code. Another one is they say it's considered a necessary part of raising a girl to prepare her for adulthood. Another reason is often motivated by beliefs that it is considered acceptable sexual behavior. It aims at, preserving premarital virginity. That's what they claim. It is also believed that it helps with marriageability. It is also associated with femininity, modesty. It makes girls give the notion that they are clean and more beautiful after this thing has happened. Some people believe that the practice it has some religious support. I haven't seen any doctrine or written anything on it. Some religious leaders take various positions, even religious leaders. Some promote it and some consider it irrelevant to religion. And then the local structures of authority. This is where it boils down to. The local structures of power and authority, such as community leaders, religious leaders, circumcisers, and even some medical personnel, they are the ones who are contributing to upholding this practice. Okay? So why can't we now have this conversation and once for all condemn the practice and save our girls?
Well, first let's also look at the reason that the power that be and the power that be usually are male. And from what they are saying, the understanding here is a woman that has her whole body intact is subject to being promiscuous. She is prone to masturbation. She's prone to being loose. She will have an unsatisfied appetite for sexual behavior. She will be basically a horny woman that cannot be satisfied by one man. So to curtail that, to minimize the woman's sexual desire and her promiscuity, the object here is to mutilate, to move a part of her body that is so sensitive that she cannot be satisfied. So those of us who are anti this, we are saying the same thing here. What happens if the female, if they were in power and they decided to mutilate, to cut out our penis heads? How important or how useful will we be if somebody remove the head of your penis and say, well, whenever a woman touches the head of this guy's penis, he's going to be erect and he's going to be raping women all over the place. So we need to dissect, to take some of his body parts. So this excuse across to convince the folks is, listen, guys, we need to get together for us to subdue these women. This is what we need to do. Instead of saying, what should we do to work with our wives and our women and our daughters, they have unilaterally decided that a woman in her entirety is promiscuous, is uncontrollable, and needs to be mutilated to subdue her, to humor who. By so doing, they incentivize this practice by glorifying those who have gone through it, by making it glamorous that whenever you went through this, you will be celebrated. So girls have the incentive against their goodwill. And some, most of the recent society, they are doing it as early as a child, when a child is born 1 year old. Some as soon as the baby is born. This is how barbaric this is. So much so that the people who are victimized suffer from this thing they call the Stockholm syndrome, that they identify with anybody that inflict this much pain on them. And the data here from Harvard University, in one of their tables, they said the prevalence amongst women that are anti, that are pro this, women who are actually, that support the continuity of the female genital mutilation among women who support that. Guinea again ranked number one. 76% of all the women in Guinea, they agree that this thing should continue. And in Liberia, the latest data says here from World Health Organization, 39% of Liberian women support that this thing continue. 39%. This is Liberia. Guinea obviously is the top of the chart, 76%. Mali women, 73%. Sierra Leone women, 69%, including the First Lady of Sierra Leone, followed by Gambia at 65%, Somalia 65%, Egypt 54%, Mauritania 41%, Sudan 41%, Liberia is 39%. On the flip side, the countries that have the least will be Togo. Only 1% of the women in Togo support this. Gambia, 2%. Benin, 3%. Iraq, 5%. Niger, 6%. Kenya, 6%. Cameroon, 7%. Uganda, 9%. But as you can see, as civilized as we thought, as Western as we thought we were in Liberia, 39% of the women supports the continuity of this. So it is steep in our society. So this is why when the Deputy Speaker of the House introduced this bill, it reminds me when I listened to Martin Luther King, one of his speeches, when he was speaking to the American people, he said, yes, it is good for us to circulate and encourage, I'm paraphrasing here, good behavior. But in most instances, that doesn't work, so we have to regulate good behavior. That means there have to be law on the books, and these laws have to be reinforced and enforced and reinforced. So yes, we want to regulate good behavior. We want to circulate, we want to encourage good behavior. But if it doesn't work, then we have to regulate and legislate good behavior. Because we leave it with the goodness of mankind, humankind, to do the right thing. That is the regulation. We want society to regulate itself. But if society fails to do that, then we have to legislate good behavior. So this is why I support Honorable Kofat in this. We have been educating our girls, our lawyers, our lawmakers, our women, and that has not worked as we have anticipated. So now it's time for us to legislate good behavior, make it mandatory that you behave yourselves. What says you, Mr.
I totally agree. But before, I'm on the side where sometimes you have to you should talk about it before you simply legislate. Legislation without understanding. If we don't understand why some laws are in place, then we may tend not to appreciate it. We may tend not to obey it. We have excellent laws on our books, Jerome, but our problem has always been execution, enforcing the law. The law has been broken, disregarded. So we want this to work. The way you make it work, if you have what we call buy-in, let people understand why it is necessary to protect Liberian girls and women from this practice. That's what I'm saying. We have to talk to the chiefs, the zoos, the people of the local community, because this is usually practiced more in a more rural surrounding, or more in the bush, as we call it. So let's reach out. Let's reach out to them and tell them this thing. Yeah, my people, we've been doing it for time and immemorial, but this time it's time to stop. There's if a woman goes anywhere, she doesn't go by herself. She goes with a man. In fact, let me give you one story. One time, an adulterous woman was brought to be stoned. They said, "Why this woman is adulterous?" They said, "But wait a minute. She was adulterous. You caught her red-handed, yeah?" I said, "Okay. Well, where's the man? Because both he and the woman both supposed to be condemned. So where's the man?" And they had no answer. So, well, let the woman go. These women don't go by themselves to do this thing. The men are also involved, equally involved. All right. So I don't see any justification for the reasons they gave. And I only see negativity coming out of it. Now, if we have this dialogue, this national dialogue, and if that doesn't convince them, then we'll be obliged. But why can't we have this dialogue? Why can't we talk it out and over and say this practice has to stop? First of all, it's not medically practiced. They talk about encouraging more medically. They call it a medical procedure, where it's done more professionally, more surgically, and with the hopes that this may be discouraged. But that conversation has to be had, Jerome. We have to stop it. Let them come up and show why they shouldn't stop it. You know, it's a false opinion. It's a false notion to say that a woman would be loose because she goes through this. That is psychological. It has nothing to do with your physical arousal. It all depends on your own personal discipline. So let's back it. And you said he's raised it on the floor.
Yes.
How much momentum is it gaining? Are we seeing some traction?
Yes, we're seeing a lot of traction, and those of us who support this bill, including women and children, we are all behind this, and I think it stands a very good chance. I know he's going to get a lot of pushback from the legislators from the north and central Liberia, from the Lofa Belt, the Bong Belt, and the Cape Mount Belt. He will get some pushback, but we are hoping that equal hair will prevail, and things will happen for our girls. And the more we talk about it, it's a very difficult subject, as you can see. Most of even our women who consider themselves advocates on here Most of them didn't want to come on to discuss it, but we will continue. We will reach out to different universities, different scholars to come back. We will actually have to return to this topic, and we're going to discuss it openly until at some point we will do our part. But let's transition to item number 2 on the agenda here. We talked about the importance of public policy. We are now looking at something called the retreat. If you were ever in upper management, top level management, in the corporate world or public policy, we usually discuss the importance of retreats. And I'm a member of several organizations that will do retreat annually, sometimes twice a year, based on the organization of which you are a part. When I was part of the Chamber of Commerce as vice president of the Chamber of Commerce in Lucey County, retreat was very important for all 1,500 corporations within our organization. We did that. When I was member and CEO of the local United Way organization, we did the same thing. When I was sitting on the board for Pop Warner, which is the minor league for football, the developmental squad, we did that. When I was member of the AAU, which is the Developmental American Amateur Athletic League, which control basketball, we do that. So retreat is very, very important. It is not cheap, but it's important. So, Mr. Eastman, let's talk about retreat. The president and this administration are now in Sanniquil. I mean, they are in Nimba County. They went through Bond County. I think they are in Nimba County. And some folks are saying, why will this pro-poor government conduct or sponsor or even agree to hosting a retreat? Talk to me. You being in corporate America, you have worked in this area, the importance of retreat, and why do you think this president at this time will conduct a retreat?
Very good. Let's first look at what the objective of this retreat is. Okay, just as you explained, every year you have to review your key objectives and look at how well you've done, and then start planning for the next following year with maybe a performance review on the past performance. This 4-day retreat, for instance, the first thing they were supposed to have been examining was the pro-poor agenda for prosperity and development, commonly known as the PAPD. They were going to specifically zoom on the national economy, revenue generation, and management and coordination. So it's the PAPD is the blueprint for the CDC government. And it's very important that this is good. They are very important that they review how well they've done in accordance with this plan and what may need to be changed. So you can clearly see that's a good thing. The other days will focus on accountability and transparency. Well, I mean, we've talked about transparency in accountability. These are some of the things that we hear all the time on all the platforms. There's no accountability. There's no transparency. So they're going to go over it now. That was supposed to do, and see how best they will address those issues. So it's not just a purpose for whining and dining. If you're just going to go there and just wine and dine and have a good time, then you see it. You haven't made the best use of the time. But if you're actually going to go to the painstaking ritual of examining every step, every department, every ministry, how well they've performed in accordance with the objectives, that is absolutely necessary. It's absolutely necessary to make sure everybody stays on track, and of course, um, looking at the year to come, they have about 17 months remaining on this term, right? This administration. So they're probably going to be planning the next 17 months just as well, and how they will best, how they will best uh, uh, attack the areas they need to attack, how they will best formulate a plan or a couple of other strategies to achieve certain objectives.
Yeah,
And
but
I'm sure the election topic may even come up as well. So that's what we expect out of this.
But,
You
but
know.
Mr. Eastman, what's about those on the other side that are saying it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time? The money spent on the retreat, they could have had this retreat at the executive mansion, or they could have it locally. They are concerned that taking the whole government to Nimba is a waste of money. It costs a lot. What do you think about the opposition's concern?
Um, a lot of times the reason why you go, the objective of going away or retreat is to remove yourself from the day to day of the city, of the day to day of your lives. You go to somewhere where you are isolated. No, you're not thinking about your family matters because you're away. So the whole idea is to keep focus on what the activities that you'll be doing. That is the objective of the retreat, to remove yourself out of the environment and where you be able to focus. So when it comes to the cost, yeah, I know there are people where they want paradigm and other things. It could be reduced if we are in a time of austerity where we're having problems meeting budget. You could ask for the less pay, a stipend cut for this period. I mean, that can be done, but to say it's not necessary, to say I wouldn't agree with that. I think we can try to reduce the expenditure and make it more reasonable given our circumstances. But it's absolutely necessary for them to come to this huddle. I call it a huddle. Like in football, before
Mhm.
you make your next play, you have to come in a huddle. This is a huddle. And they're going away to make this huddle. I think it's necessary, but where they should consider our financial constraints and make it not as lavish or as how it might have been done in the past. But definitely, I don't think it's wrong for it to be done. It needs to be done.
Thank you. Let me recognize a few folks here as we continue. Fretters, he said he's chiming in from Lisbon, Portugal. Thank you very much. We got Charity Opera here. Thank you very much. We got Achimo Frederick. Thank you very much. We have Alexander Brown. Thank you very much for tuning in. Uh, we appreciate you tuning in every now and then and chiming in. Daniel Wallow, thank you very much. Linda West, Samuel Ray, Samuel T. Ray, obviously Dave Jai, thank you very much. Alberta Nimbo, Hasman Famula, Sua Mapu. Thank you very much for tuning in. Continue to share the show. Now, let's look at real quick before we move to the next topic here. I remember when we were young, President Tubman used to have the county meet and his birthday, the celebration in Monrovia. And he came to the realization that, listen, by moving these events, these celebrations around, not only are we going to the different counties, but that we are actually carrying the economy and development to the different areas. So as these people come to the local markets, hotels, transportation, restaurants, you name it, the economy booms for a week. In the case of President Tubman, rotating the county meet All his celebration, whenever they went to a county, they developed, they build homes, they build halls, they do. So they rotated the development of his birthday, the celebration in Monrovia. I think you need to put some. You got a gadget open?
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll take it.
Realization that, listen. So here we are. We have, like, I was watching the arrival of the president in Nimba. The excitement. I mean, you can see the economic benefits for the 4 days they're going to be in Nimba, even when they stop over in Bond County. So it is not only about Monrovia and Montserrado and the executive mansion. So you are right to that degree that yes, when we get into Nimba for the 4 days they're going to be there, I think one of our critics said it earlier that all the hotels, all the motels, there's nowhere to sleep in the area because the government officials are in town, friends of the government are in town. You can't go anywhere. Traffic is everywhere, but the economy is booming in that area. So that was the essence of moving the retreat from the Monrovia area to the nearby. I remember a couple of years ago it was in Buchanan. And it was great. So I see no reason with that, but that's just the take of the opposition, that this is about showmanship and exploit, and they think that it will not do the economy any good by spending that much money, even though it may have been obviously budgeted for the event. But let's pivot to the third thing here. I really want us to go, if we can switch number 3 to number 4. So let's discuss number 4 first. We are looking at a young man by the name of Tiawan Gongloe. Tiawan Gongloe, when he began his quest, most people took him for granted. Nobody took him seriously. The gentleman is a man of character. He is very stern. He understands the issue. He grew up in Liberia. He has been part of the government. He served in several positions. And in fact, I know him personally from labor, and he got booted out of labor because he was too firm, too rigid, and too straightforward for a Liberian. And Ellen Johnson could not stand that and kicked him out. Now that Joseph Boakai have floundered, people are now beginning to say, should we actually have a second look at Mr. Gongloe? And I think the nation should. What says you, Mr. Eastman?
Okay. For full disclosure, I know Councillor Gongloe personally. We went to school together at LU. He was even though we were colleagues, but he was a little ahead because he actually marked our test papers. In the senior year, he marked our papers for the professor. He had already completed. We always looked up to him. He was by his colleagues. He was naturally looked up to. There was something about his personality, his astuteness, his firmness, his discipline that was admirable. We all did as colleagues. So that says a lot that your colleagues look up to you and hold you highly. That's just my personal experience with him. I've never forgotten him, though it's been years. And saw him, ran into him the other day, and I thought that was very interesting. But the opposition, as is clearly put, is kind of like in disarray at this point. There has been a lot of infighting and bickering amongst them, and it's sort of like they're not offering the Liberian people an alternative. And so Councillor Gongloe, what he has to his favor is the very thing you mentioned. He's always been a guy who sticks to rules and principles. In my observation, one of our problems that we suffer from is we do not hold the same rules for everyone. If somebody we accuse today of doing something wrong, when it happens to be one of our relatives or one of our friends that we like, we want to give an excuse or we want to cover it up. And that is not how you build it. The only way you actually can build a functioning society is if you apply the law justly against everybody without covering up for anyone. As long as that is start to be done, people will start to conform to the law. So Gongloe is the embodiment of this. He will resign a position if you're not doing it right way. He will not want any part of it. He will resign. So he has those good things in his favor. And lately, I've heard that he's making some strategic moves. I was wondering, would he join forces with Cummings? Would he join forces with Boakai? And lately, I've heard he's going to join forces with Lima Bowie, if I hope I'm not butchering her name, the Nobel Prize winner. So if this is in fact true, this is beginning to look like a very interesting ticket because she's a very outspoken woman and many people look up to her. She's more widely known than Councilor Gongloe at this time. And if this is at all true, it might just gain some traction in the months to come. They don't have much time, but then the Liberian people, you have to say, will they be allured to this new dynamic duo? So it's going to be interesting.
Well, let's look at this particular ticket. You threw a market range in there. I didn't see. I didn't see. Uh, I didn't see Mrs. Bowie in there, but that's very interesting. You talk about Bung and Nimba combined, two hardworking folks. I don't know. I don't know of her. I don't know whether she has any leadership ability, whether she held in an office, but I can vouch for Mr. Gongloe. Know him, and real quick before we move on, I remember when he was at Labor, he wanted to professionalize the ministry, and he supported the civil service exams, and all the young folks from around the country took the civil service exams. And my younger brother, he just graduated from UMU, and he sat for the exam. And it so happens that they say he scored the highest in the nation, and he was on duty for me doing some work in the interior on the farm. And 2 weeks later, he heard his name on the radio that he was needed at Labor. He showed up with his grade, and Gongloe hired him. And he began to work with Gongloe, and he began to embrace me on issues, his leadership style, things that he has done. And he predicted, he said, Jerome, I want to tell you, I don't think Gongloe is going to last here. And I say, if he's that good, why? He says, he is too straight of a man and he's going to run into trouble. And a year later, he started running into trouble. And he told me personally, he says, when funds are collected from the field, Gongloe will instruct them to make a direct deposit to the central bank, bring him 2 copies. He will send 1 copy to the Ministry of Finance and send a copy to the president's office. And few times he was warned not to do that, to desist, that there were other channels of funding the money instead of directly to the central bank. And they say he stood his ground. He was not going to send any dime collected by the Labor Ministry to any other place other than the central bank and CC Capital, all the interested parties. And that was his downfall. And when they got rid of him, the person that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf appointed came in, and fired 99% of all the college graduates that Gongloe brought in as labor. And the excuse was, these college graduates are making $600-700. We could bring in consultants and pay them $5,000 per month, and they would do a better job. It would be less expensive. Now you do the math. A guy making $700 a month, you got rid of him, and bring in someone, call them consultants, and pay them $5,000 a month, and say at least we don't have to pay them benefits and retirement. That was the logic. So I can vouch that my fear, just like my younger brother fear was, and you can chime me on this, a man who is a stellar citizen, will he be a lone voice to be sabotaged? Can a one man, can a guy like him in a nation that we all know has issue with integrity and corruption and everything else, can one man be the judge, the jury, and the executioner? How successful can that be?
A good question. One man can't do it, but here's what people do. This is what they do. With his beliefs and morals that he stands strong, he finds similar people of that same resolution, of that same conviction, to stand along with it. So he forms what we call an inner core. Well, it may not even have more than 5 people out of that innermost circle, that who strategizes and come up with the plans and make sure that the nucleus of what they're trying to create does not lose its value and momentum, does not get distorted. You can't do it alone. You need strategists and you need other people to join you. So what he will do is have that nucleus group and try to grow that group into a consensus that you will have several of these different people of like minds going out and converting others. And then hopefully that is how it's something like how Christianity started by just a few groups of fishermen, and who later on started spreading the word, and it got to the whole world. That is how you do it. I see he, of course, he's going to run into some issues. Politics in Liberia is daunting. It's not something easy to do. He may be affiliated with, he may know how to conduct law, understand the law, but politics is different than law. It's more of appealing to people. It's more having to win favor from different people, from different leaders, So he's going to have to cultivate a style, a charisma that will attract more people, because it is a popularity contest. And our people, the kind of way we've been exposed to, everybody said, well, what do you got for me? I mean, what it is in it for me? A lot of our politics today is, what is in it for me? What will I get? Many of us are not looking for the long-term benefits of the country. So, well, look, you do this, eventually your children will enjoy, or your children will have education and health care. They want a more immediate gratification. He's going to have to also deal with that. And if you don't have the finance to win those kind of people on board, it's going to be a challenge. So he got a lot of work cut out for him. But what may be to his advantage is if people are experiencing strife in the country, if they're having challenges, putting food on the table, they're going to look elsewhere for answers. So
but
again, I will always say that it's always the incumbent. It's always the CDC race to lose, but these
well,
people may make some headway.
okay. So let's look at the old order, the entrenched, the corruption I'm talking about, the old order that been there for hundreds of years. I remember listening to one of William V.F. Tubman's teaching, and he says, coming from the Southeast, he was always considered an outsider. So there's a group he calls the Monrovia Boys, the Monrovia clique. These are the entrenched, corrupt, family-oriented that been in there for so long that no matter what you do, they will undermine and bring you down to your knees. And he said he had to do some unconventional things to bring them under control. This is Tubman. How do you deal with these entrenched, corrupt, old order that been here? Those who, do you know who I am? I am this, I am that. Coupled with judicial appointment for life, coupled with tenure position for life, because that's Ellen's legacy. Almost everybody that she liked, she made tenure position. You cannot be fired. Then we have the entrenched civil servants, those who never goes to work, come as they please, leave as they please, that are entrenched. They cannot be fired. They are there, and they have their tentacles. So it's Gongloe or Tubman from the outside to come in and say, well, I know he has something called a broom, but Tubman used more than the broom. The broom cannot do it. You need more than that. Tubman came in, he says, I know exactly what to do, and I'm going to start with Bagley. He started with Bagley and the Colemans and everybody. He has told them, I have new sheriffs is in town. And that's how come he was able to succeed. Anything other than that, a mere broom is impossible to claim that city. What will you advise him to do as a politician?
Well, let's look first. Let's clear up about Tubman. When Tubman came, agreed that they were the Monrovia clique, okay, and he came coming from Kepamas. He was not part of the Monrovia clique, okay, and when you say they were corrupt, I know they had their clique, but I don't you those days you didn't see anybody with opulence and or more having more money than others. A lot of people who are big shots were still walking on the ground. In other words, the children had no shoes. There's a misconcept, of how it was before then, how it became later on. Even during Barclay time, or the people were still walking on the ground. People, in other words, the whole Liberia were generally poor. There were exceptional few who were wealthy. Well, most of them were not wealthy. Most of 99% of the people, among all the classes, all the people, even the settler group, they were still poor. Only very, very few. But Tubman knew he had to for him to get any traction and any leverage, he had to bring in help his own. He had to get his own clique, and he was very strategic. He brought his people from Kepamas. He brought a lot of them. I don't want to call names here, but there are people like A. Wilson, all those kind of people. So he started bringing them in. What he also did, what was to me the most strategic move he made, he started using chiefs, inviting them in. He opened a whole office for them where they could come and lodge, and he included them in the group, and that helped him gain momentum until he was the dominant force in Monrovia, and no one could tell him, no one could go against him, and if you did, you'd meet your fate. We've seen what happened to Fumbler. We see what happened to D12. We've seen what happened to Coleman. So he used all kinds of draconian methods, which I wouldn't support, but that was the day, and we saw a lot of corruption even with him. We've seen where the state resources, where grants or things were given, but there were some deals signed that his family immediately benefited from instead of the Liberian people benefited. So I don't know if he dislodged another corrupt group or he brought his own. I really that will be a question for the day. But he did use some strategy. What Gongloe will do, because Gongloe to me is a very honest man. That's how I know him. He will bring people like him there who want to change things. It's going to be very difficult, just what you said, because they got people entrenched in office. You know that we used to say, "Do this for me, and I'll give you cold water." Just encourage the person to do their job or to facilitate their doing their job. But today, you got to pay to play. You gotta. If you don't do anything, they wouldn't even do it. They wouldn't do it at all. So you have to change that mentality. Change. But I want to tell you, Mr. Gamer, it's not hard. If people start getting fired because they don't want to conform with doing their job, or they want to take a handout before they can do the job, or they're caught with their hands in the cookie jar. When people start seeing consequences for this type of behavior, it changes. We in America, for instance, I'm not going to. They said we shouldn't compare, but you know why you don't find all that loose drinking and driving like you find back home? Because if you know very well, you make one little wrong turn and they pull you over, you're going to be in so much trouble, $20,000 trouble, jail term, all kinds of things. A record, a criminal record. So it deters you from doing these things. We need deterrence to this type of behavior, and the only way you have a deterrent if you punish people for it. If you don't look the other way, so we're all one family. You hear that a lot. Oh, we're all the same. But then you're not going to fix anything. You have to deter people from this. We can live without being like that. It's become a norm, but it shouldn't be. So I very much see he will start doing that. Now, that may become very unpopular. If you remember the transition from Tubman to Talbot, Tubman was free-handed. As much as he was doing all his stuff, he was so free-handed, people loved him. They felt he was great. He was the benevolent dictator, as he was called. Once you saw the president, he gave you something, you would feel all right. So then you come to see somebody like Talbot, he was not a free-handed person. He was not very giving, and he was very much on the discipline front. He wasn't very popular because of that. But many of his policies were good. Many of his policies were intended to lift us from the mattress to the mattress and then get us on track. But at the same time, he was trying to do a businessman thing too. So they were a little bit conflicting. But that transition is tough.
Now, let me hold you right there. That leads us into our final topic because we're running out of time.
Okay.
Corruption and LISGIS. What do you know about LISGIS and who are they and why this is so important?
LISGIS, that's been the talk of the day lately. A couple of years ago, they found that the national population and housing census is estimated to be about $18.9 million. So the government of Liberia was expected to provide about 6.7, while the UNFPA and other partners will match the government's contribution to the estimated costs. Okay. So what the government was supposed to do in about they committed to 3 million first, and then on May 15, 2019, and then there would be they came to agreement, and through subsequent payments they will come up to the 6 million that they have pledged to submit. So both parties agreed about the contributions and that they will be put in a city bank in New York. Okay. So it was the year of the payment. It was in on April 30, 1 million, June 30, it should be 2 million, and December 31, another 1.5 million. But where we saw the year now that this money that has been deposited, allocated from the government to go into this fund is being withdrawn. And their questionable activities of Mr. Wu, who is the chairman or the director general, okay, Professor Wu is, and he has been issuing checks against these amounts. And they've been unauthorized. The accountants say they didn't authorize some of these checks, and they don't know why they're going about. And this been going on for some time now. And recently, we hear that it's over $700,000 has not been transferred to this account yet, whereby the government has received up to 1.8 million.
Yeah,
so where's the money?
Yeah, but the latest there. First, let's get to what LISGIS is. This is the group that is in charge of our census demographics. Their job is to tell us how many folks in the country, where we are, our age groups, and who's eligible to vote, and all of these. This is very serious. We have elections coming up in 2023. People have been talking about voter registration roll. Some folks are saying the population of Liberia is under 5 million. Some say it's a little over 5 million. How legitimate are these figures? As you can remember, during the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and early, we were just stuck at 3.5 million. Then later on, it's at 4 million, and we've been stuck at 5 million forever. LISGIS is the arm of the government that's supposed to conduct the census, give us the statistics that are needed for us to apply for grant on the international level, how many kids are in school, how many schools all of these things fall on the LISGIS. Now we are finding out that the money that have been put aside for the functioning of this organization from the government, because there are several matching funds from the international community, from the local budget, all of this all into one. To our dismay or to our shock, based on what we are reading, we don't have the facts, but they are saying that according to the bank records, LISGIS account is negative 25,000 US dollars. This is the statistical arm of the Republic of Liberia. These are the folks that are supposed to give us numbers. So how are we going to conduct a census when the head of the Census Bureau is corrupt? In fact, I heard there was a private recording that when he was brought to task by one of his staff, he said to his staff, to the young man, his deputy, the president can't remove me because my seat belongs to the NP or to the NPP. The vice president recommended me for this seat. So George, President Weah cannot fire me. This seat belongs to NPP. So this is a young man or a man or gentleman whose loyalty is not to the party, is not to the nation, but to his organization that sent him there. He said, only Vice President Joel Howard Taylor can get me out of here because she appointed me, sent me on behalf of NPP to the administration, and this is the arrangement that we have. This is a government of coalition. So when you and I were talking about Gongloe and everybody else, this is what we are talking about. Government is about inclusion. It's about bringing folks on, like you said, like-minded folks. And recommendation is very important in government when we are vetting folks. Sometimes you look good on paper, but nobody knows you. Nobody can vouch for you. So when the vice president recommends you and say, this person will do the job, and you get on the job and something like that happens, and when you are taken to task and you say the president cannot get rid of me because this particular position does not belong to CDC, it belongs to NPP, and the vice president recommended me, only she can remove me from here. This is where we are in our Liberian political dispensation. So leadership that we were talking about, it is the power of persuasion, the power to convince other folks to see things your way. But again, Gongloe say he has a broom. Can the broom actually work here, or you need a carrot and a stick like Tubman?
You need a strategy. If you say I don't like to use Tubman's strategy. I mean, his thing, but you need a strategy to do it. And in the beginning, you will not be able to do all one time. You have to gain. Tubman slowly dislodged those people from Monrovia. He slowly broke through them. He didn't just do it all one day. He slowly got more and more people in the government who owed their loyalty to him. And once he had enough people who owed their loyalty to him, then he could oust the other people out of there completely. So when they tried to challenge him, I think Barclay tried to challenge him again, and he couldn't. It was to no avail. It was to no avail. And I see a comment from one of our people. Yeah, there was corruption. But what I was just always saying that there were few, not as many as we think were corrupt as back in those days. There were few who were very, very few who were collecting the wealth. That is very true. But here's the thing: nobody's above the law. And even this man who claims that if he stole, if he did something illegal, the law can bring him to task. But here's where we have the problem. Remember, it was determined that NOCAL money was taken from NOCAL, and after it was proven beyond all reasonable doubt, what happened? The president absolved the guilty from that. Her son was involved in it, and she said, "Well, you'll look to me." The problem is not that we can't find these people guilty or the law can't be brought, but what action is being taken. So he can't tell us that he cannot tell us that he's above the law. But what may happen when we bring him to justice, unless somebody exonerates him, then the only way he will walk free. So when Gongloe comes, Gongloe's not going to do something like that. Not the man not the fellow I thought. He will want you to stand trial. He will want you, this thing that's going on, if you're wrong, you'll stand trial and you will pay for your penalty. Now, I believe the only reason why this guy could be so bold, okay, is because he alone has not been taking this money. No one can be this bold and take hundreds and hundreds of thousands and just think you're going to walk away free. So let's see how this saga ends. But my take is he does not have any authority to say nothing will happen to him unless he took this money and gave it to somebody who will protect him from being incarcerated for his actions.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome some of our friends here. I see Mr. James Davis. I see Evan Couture. I see Riverset Pro. Thank you for chiming in. I see Larry Duncan, Lakbo Nyakwe. Is that Kema Moluba? Thank you very much for tuning in. Mr. Eastman, we are running out of time here. We got about 9 minutes here. Can you go through a few of the comments and then we do our closing? Pick about 5 comments that you want to go through.
Okay, all right. Our usual people. Thank you, Mr. Wole is here. Linda West, Daniel Wallow, Charity Oprah, and she's been making Alexander Brown, Achimo Fredericks. He said this should be a national educational problem. When we're talking about the gender mutilation, the female gender mutilation, he said this should be a national educational project, a pictorial display of the pros of not having this done to women and the cons of this procedure being done. So he said we should have a whole a national project on this, that conscientizing everybody to this.
Yes, but while I agree with him, I see no pro in this. There is no pro. It's all con to me. There is nothing beneficial to say this is pro. There's no pro here. I'm looking at Kema Moluba here. She wants to know, why is female genital mutilation practiced? I think we went over that already. It is this pseudoscience and pseudo belief by the power that be, mostly men, that believe instead of dealing with their own inadequacies, they are saying that if a woman is intact and she's whole, they won't. We able the women now, they too sassy, or they too strong, or they never get satisfied. That is the pseudo science that is behind this. Men get together and say, if we don't do this, the women, they will just be all over the place. One man can satisfy a woman. Those kinds of archaic thinking. That's what it is. We are running out of time, Mr. Eastman. Read one more comment and then you go to closing.
Yeah, Evans Couture making a good observation. He said they have to throw away the current voter roll far and destroy the key. The new voter registration has to be a biometric one to minimize vote rigging. He says, well, if they're going to have any success, the current voter roll will have to be thrown away. That's what he is saying here.
Let me talk to him about real quick about the biometrics, because one of the things that when about 2011, people were clocking in. My employees were clocking in, so we decided to go to biometrics, fingerprints. And you come in, we pay a lot of money, and they install the device. And as the guys come in, they will you put your fingerprint, and then you slide this stuff, and you also kind of know you can't do anything. Little did we know that the gentleman that was actually doing that was extracting the data had a girlfriend that was working with me. And as he was extracting the data for payroll, he would go in there and increase the hours for this girl. This girl working, she was supposed to be working 40 hours a week. And I started noticing that at the end of the 2 weeks, I was looking at 92, 93 hours, 96 hours. And we began to see how could someone be paid 96 hours in the 2 weeks period where there is no overtime. And then we brought in the forensic folks and they look at it and say, somebody have been messing with the biometric system. So my friend, I'm going to say that it cannot be, this thing is not foolproof. To be verified, your only foolproof is the system that Liberia is using now, where everybody has a representative in the room, where they see the data, their sheets, their tally sheets. Everybody signs off on it, and you get yours on the spot. Before the Elections Commission gets the final tally, like, for instance, do the Dara Dillon, Thomas Fala election, which I monitor very closely. Before, about 5-10 minutes after the poll closed, Dara Dillon and his boys have had all their tally sheets combined. They knew who the winners were. There's no way you could have cheated. Same thing that just happened in Lofa County. Once the 454 tally sheets were given to everybody, there's no way you can say it's given to the media, it's given to all the campaign managers, it is signed. There is no way. If you want to audit that particular paper, even on the website, if there's an error on the website, it means absolutely nothing. If you go to the Supreme Court, they want to audit. Mr. T5 Mr. Jala bring your 454 sheets. Mr. Cotto bring your 454 sheets. Miss what the woman Fofana bring your 400. Everybody have the same sheet, and you add it up on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So the data entry is useless. If anybody makes a mistake on the website, mean absolutely nothing. You can audit this stuff because everybody have the same copy. And the gentleman who was in charge of that, who put it together, said Liberia has the best voting system in West Africa. All the other voting system in a different country, they are directly attached to the government. Like in the Ivory Coast, the Supreme Court has the final say on who wins and who loses, not the people. So we have a good thing in Liberia. Your problem is that you should be fully represented to sign the tally sheet. If two people walked in here and Eastman signed that he saw two, and I signed we saw two, and they stamped, and you have your two tally sheet, and I have my, there's no way Eastman can come back and say, I saw 10 people there. It doesn't work that way. So it all boils down to your polling station, your reps. Remember, you got independent observer, you got the media also. So we have a great system there, and there will be no reason. Yes, do we need to have a new voter roll? Yes, because every year we have new people that become of age, voting age. They need to be added onto that, and people who die need to be taken from the voter list. So yes, we need to purge and add some as well. So Mr. Eastman, close, and let's get going. We got 2 minutes.
Okay, just so we talked about a few things today. Definitely, we need to stop female circumcision in our country. We need to have a nation discussion and put an end to it, and finally have laws that will ban it. But importantly, we will need to get people to understand why we need to ban it. We see that this aegis is being mismanaged. Now they're in the somebody need to answer some questions. And it's unfortunate that it has come to this level. This thing was known. Someone blew alarm a long time ago. And it's unfortunate that we allow this. Does not have to happen. And allowing these things to happen is a negative reflection. So it doesn't appear that we'll have a census very soon. When it comes to we got a new kid on the block now in the political scene, and that is Councillor Tiawan Gongloe, and if my reports are right, Lima Bowie. And that will throw a new twist in the politics of tomorrow. But with all that, it is still very much a CDC race to win, given the circumstances. But at least it is refreshing to see somebody like with integrity in the race that may give up Liberians another opportunity. And I want to see. It will be interesting as we watch to see how people will align with the new options that are available today.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. As you just heard, Mr. Eastman. For those of us like I'm a supporter of the government, support the pro-poor agenda, but yet and still we have to be objective. We have to be honest to ourselves, to our nation, and to our government. Mr. President, I know you are on your retreat. If you are watching or you are listening, it makes sense that you take charge of the LISGIS matter. It is serious. Our census, how many folks we are in this nation, how many folks have died since the past elections, how many folks have become new voters, all of these things have to be sorted out. And not only do they have to be sorted out, but they have to be believable. honest. And the only agency that is clothed with that authority to legitimize the number is LISGIS. And as it stands, LISGIS is a three-legged stool operating on one leg. All it takes is someone to touch it and it's going to tumble. And the importance of LISGIS, our international funding is based on numbers. And if Nigeria is coming up with 300 million, Kenya is coming up with 60 million, the Guinea is coming up with 40 million, Sierra Leone is coming up with 9 million, and Liberia comes out, we're just stuck at this 5 million. It says a lot about who we are, and everything ties into it. Some folks are saying, if you can't feed 5 million folks, if you can't manage 5 million folks, how could you manage a country like Nigeria with almost 300 million folks? With a land that's fertile, smart people as we are, and we cannot manage a single agency called LISGIS. Got issue, Mr. President. Take charge. As usual, we want to thank those who are watching. We are going through some technical changes here. We are moving our time from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. We are trying to do as much as we can to cater to our friends, our relatives, and our brothers in Liberia. So we are adjusting other shows to accommodate them. They want to get involved. And as you can see, when we start here at 4 o'clock, it's either 8 o'clock or 9 p.m. there. So we are trying to accommodate as much as we can. So we are now going to be coming on at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which will be 9 o'clock Liberia time or 10 o'clock Liberia time when the time adjusts itself. In the meantime, we are trying to do a particular show that comes on at 3 o'clock here, between 3 and 5. That will be, 5, 6, 7 o'clock in Liberia. We'll give our brothers and sisters a chance to chime in and be participatory in this effort. It's all about information dissemination, and we don't want to be talking to ourselves. We also want to communicate with our folks on the ground. So bear with us. Our new time will be 5 p.m. Eastern time. We love you. As usual, we say, this is the end of the show for today. Mr. CA, if you are there, we say we end our show with our usual song, We Are All Liberians. And we would love for you to continue to participate with your comments. At times, if you have the chance to call in and chime in. If you want to take on Mr. Eastman in the debate one-on-one, that's fine too. Come on. If you want to
bring it.
Fine, come on. We are ready for you. I know some of you think that we are soft on the government. That's not so. It's just a matter of truth. If you have any numbers beyond what we are talking about, that's fine. Like today, we put the numbers out there. We think that Mr. Gongloe would be a formidable force. Obviously, if I wasn't voting for George Weah, I would vote for Mr. Gongloe. And I still think he would be my choice for 2029. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for chiming in. Mr. Eastman, thank you very much for taking all the time. I'm hoping that Mr. CA is here. If he's not,
Mr. Tule comes back.
Yeah, Mr. Tule is coming back. Obviously, Mr. Tule is doing this very complicated. He wants to be, I think he wants to do something in cybersecurity, and he's actually working day and night. And at times, when we change the time, it affects his studies, but he's going to adjust. Our brother, Mr. Padmo, is in California working on a project. He will be back next week. So we look forward to bringing our whole crew back and discussing issues that are pertinent to Liberian politics, Liberian economy, and our people. Like today was all about our Liberian culture and the effect that it has. We say when we were growing up, or every society goes through this growth period. There were things that we did 20, 30 years ago that are no longer germane. When you look at our bodies, there are things, the science, anthropologists and scientists call it vestiges, things that basically have no more, like some people were born with 6 fingers, and it's only there, but it has no use. So what they either clip it off, they surgically remove it because you don't need 6 fingers. So there are vestiges from the old that we need to get rid of. And that is one of those things that we can do without. Female circumcision has no place in our society. It serves no function. Our brothers in the different society, poorer society, Sunday society that believe in this has nothing to do with denigrating of your culture. We are saying keep the good part of the culture and go and let go of those that are harmful to ourselves, to our daughters, our wives, our children. We need to be serious about this. We need to do this. And it begins with you and myself. Like we used to teach, we all took service back home. He says the government begins in the home. This particular subject, the discussion begins in our homes. Will you take your daughter out of school for 6 weeks, 6 months to do this? We heard when we talk about the legislative part, the law piece, that in Todi, Montserrat, Monrovia itself, there were women chasing girls, kidnapping them, and taking them to Carisburg. Can you imagine kidnapping somebody's daughter for weeks? And when they were rescued, she said that the girls were being frisky because they have not gone through the rites. And as it stands today, we have not heard whether they were persecuted, whether they were convicted of any crime. They turned them over to the internal ministry. So those of you who are into this thing, we are saying this has been one of the issues that Liberia has always had from the very get-go. We either abide by a single judicial system. You cannot have 2 masters. They say we have a constitutional democracy, but then we also have our tribal law and tribal judicial system. And there's a demarcation. When the Zoe are doing their thing, whether they did something right or wrong, the police can't come. You saw last year or 2 years ago in Bong or Nimba County where the police went to arrest somebody, the person ran in the Zoe bush, and the devil came to grab this police officer and brutalized him. So how can we live with this duality? We either have a constitutional democracy that we all abide by the same law, or we always going to have this issue when someone tells you, this is my jurisdiction and you can't cross it. It's terrible. So we have to have a consensus. We either have one law and practice that law, then hide behind something called the tribal law. And the police can't come here. The police is going to Lofa County, and the devil is stopping the police and stopping everybody at the Lofa Bridge and say, you can't come in here. Thank God the police and the justice ministry were strong and say, this should not happen, and we were not going to allow this to happen. But these are the things we are talking about. The law has to cover everybody. Nobody should be above the law. And Mr. Eastman, you know what I'm talking about. While we wait for Mr. C to get off the
I think he's ready. He's ready. So let's go.
Great. Let's do this. So as usual, we say we all Liberians. Let's go to our song. We see you next Sunday. You say he's ready? Let's do it.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.